intradural technique, so like I say, with the transcavernous technique, if you want to do a pituitary meningioma intranasally, you want to do a chordoma, chondrosarc, it's a good technique where you want to interrupt the blood supply up front. If you want to do a hypothalamic glioma or a craniopharyngioma, the intradural technique is easier one and perhaps the one that you need to do. And before you do it, both sides always look at the pathology and go, is it necessary? Can I just do it on one side and get away with it? And because you're basically preserving the venous drainage when you're doing that. So in conclusion, all these competing techniques give you access to the posterior clinoid, dorsal cell and retroinfundibular area. You have to evaluate the pathology. Like I say, with the subcellular intradural, sometimes you always have to bear in mind that looking up or rostrally, you're going to struggle. In terms of when to do these, I've already gone through that, but it's important to understand the anatomy, layers around the gland and the ligaments. One other key point is also having a good Doppler. You really want to. Majority of the endoscopic cases that I do now that always is more than stealth. I do a CTA to look at the osseous and the vascular anatomy, and always have a good going Doppler, and that's more than what you need really. The stealth doesn't help much when you're making these incisions because its margins are millimeters rather than. So here, for example, this is a craniopharyngioma that I did before I came in. So if you look at that there's a big cyst just behind in the retroinfundibular area, and a lower cyst which is at the pontomedullary junction. Incidentally, the whole thing was fairly calcified, and as you go along, you learn to adapt each one of these approaches. So in this case, actually, my job was made easier because the kid was partially, or practically pan-hypoped, and therefore I elected to cut the gland and the stalk to get good clearance and access that area, and did a midclidal exposure with a Caldwell luck to look cross-court at that lower pole. But if this kid didn't have partial, or almost complete hypopituitarism, you will have to use one of those techniques, and my preference would have been to go intradural. Okay,
thank you. That was really nice. The only issue is that I'm talking in Indian scenario, in most of the places, you need to have a Doppler.
Yes.
That's important.
Absolutely.
And I can see the need for Doppler because you're just abutting on a vessel which would change its course when you've done the bone dissection, and it won't match with the stealth, definitely.
Yes.
The second thing, of course, I want to point out is that any endocrine dysfunction has again to be matched with an equally competent endocrinologist, which must be in place. So these are the minimum requirements to venture into these sort of situations. That's where probably one has to be judicious about giving these advice.
In fact, I had this discussion with Arnold Singh sitting here yesterday. So going back to the Doppler, and I think there are two things. When you're doing your standard pituitaries, the so-called standard pituitaries, I would recommend if you have the right facility, you want to get the hang of doing these approaches. So as a minimum, every pituitary gland tumor, you're exposing clonus vasculitis. The ones that are abutting carotid, you're basically exposing the carotid. So you're in the habit of doing that, and it's effortless. And so that's what I've been doing with every case since fellowship. Expose the carotid fully. And the key thing is getting the technique right, having a good Doppler. In terms of management of DI, etc., in my own sort of personal practice so far, so we did a bunch of cranios when I was doing my fellowship, and where I am in Bristol right now, the adult side, I've done a bunch of cranios, and I've had no issues with endocrine management. But on the pediatric side, which is a separate hospital, we've had some issues. So I totally agree that you can do these cases, and you can have wild swings of sodium, and you can have huge perioperative morbidity. If you don't have, you can have hyponatremic seizures, which will blow out your entire recon. The patient can be coughing on the tube, which will blow out your recon, so which will undo your 10, 12 hours of work in one instant. So I definitely agree, particularly with the pediatric craniopharyngiomas, you need a very, very strong multidisciplinary team, not just surgical, but good ICU, good endocrine. And that's been mirrored in my own experiences.
The second thing is about the CSF leak,
yes.
And number two, the sinonasal sort of complications, that one, morbidity,
so going back to CSF leak, I think for things like chordomas, chondrosarc, if you get a good reconstruction, and you have a nice nasoseptal flap. And if your ENT team particularly can do a good nasoseptal flap, well vascularized, has the ability to do the extended flaps where you're going on the floor. And you know, so this is exactly what I learned from Juan, and that's what I do. If I have any suprasellar defect, I put a Duragen in there, fascia overlying that, strip, make sure all the mucosa is out, and then I put a nasoseptal flap, which is, you know, wider than everything that's in the thing, and then a lumbar drain for 3 days. With the craniopharyngiomas, however, I think the leak rate, despite good repair, is high. I don't know whether it's just a pathology, whether it's the fact that you get irregular defects in the skull base and the fibers. The rates of leak with craniopharyngiomas, from what I've seen so far around the world, and you know, even what I'm finding out, even with very good reconstructions, you always have your fingers crossed. Partly because the kids always have a stormy perioperative course. But I think if you're doing a tubercular meninge or those kind of things, you can actually really manage your leak rates very well if you get good reconstruction. And other thing to do is do a medial post-op CT, check how much air there is in the head so that you don't create a fistula by opening up the lumbar drain vigorously. Sinonasal, I think majority of that morbidity comes from the nasoseptal flap and the crusting. And again, at Stanford, there was a very good system in place for seeing these patients in the ENT clinic 2 weeks out, suctioning out all the packing, but you can't escape the crusting. You can put various things along the septum to reduce that incidence, but they have a bad time with that. For about 6 to 8 weeks, but when you look at the data, 12 weeks out, 3 to 4 months out, most people, you know, edge to their baseline. But then if you're
That's
dealing
where
with
the argument comes between the transcranial and the existing, the morbidity and the follow-up becomes a bit cumbersome when you go nasal route. While those who can remove it from the top, they say it's all done at one go, don't have all these problems.
yeah, you can argue that, but I mean, the thing is that when you're doing, I have no doubt in my mind at all that for big, you know, pituitary lesions, for well-selected tubercular cell meningiomas, certainly for craniopharyngiomas, the endoscopic approach is much better. And that's oftentimes the problem when you look at these groups. The problem with endoscopy and microscopy is simple, is that in endonasal work, you need a big team around you. Starting from the person who's driving your scope, you need to use 2 hands. You can't hold, you know, endoscope in your one hand and do complex microneurosurgical dissection. So the mobility comes from people holding the scope in one hand and pulling. So your pulse the perforators, patient stroke out. That's not the fault of the endoscope, that's just poor technique. But good technique means you need a big team around you. You need someone who can drive the scope well, or you need a good scope holder that you know how to position differently. You need a good ENT team who can raise a flap. And so it's having that complex. Whereas for poorly selected tumors, if you have a tubercular cell meningioma that's going lateral to the anterior thyroid, you know, use an open approach.
So, thank you very much, Dr. Kumar. And that is the end of this very important session.